Never meet your heroes, especially if they're dead. Years before the Child of Chaos makes their fateful choice, young Dantess faces his own reckoning. Dantess wants to follow in the footsteps of his dead grandfather, a legendary priest of war, but his father forbids it. In fact, his father's hatred of war lands him in a cell within the god's temple. The only way to free him from the inside, so Dantess must choose: let his father die or defy his upbringing and become a priest and win his father's freedom in the temple's deadly game of war. Torn between the legacies of his father and his grandfather, Dantess finds that both paths hide secrets that threaten to destroy everything he cares about, including his sanity. Dantess must decide who he wants to be. If he's wrong, everyone will pay the price. The Game of War. The Trials of Dantess, Warrior Priest. Written and narrated by Glenn Dahlgren. Hello, so in this video I'm going to be reviewing The Game of War, which is a prequel to the first book, which I have not read yet. I started with the prequel first, going in chronological order, and let's just jump right into the review. I do want to say that if you have read the first book, but you have not read this book yet, the prequel, if you want to form your own opinion, check it out because there might be some spoilers ahead. With that said, let's jump right into the first topic, the title. Now, yes, there is a Game of War, and there is a lot of build-up to the Game of War. So the title is fine. And I think the title on Amazon might be a tad long. I think just calling it the Game of War would probably be best. Or maybe like the Game of War, part of the Chaos Chronicles or something. Because that's what's on my cover, or on the cover of it. But it has a longer name on the Amazon page. But I mean, as long as you can find it, it's fine. I would give this probably 4 stars for the title. And I'll dive more into why I gave 4 stars when I get to the story portion. But moving on to the cover. I think the cover is very nice. The blue really pulls away from the brown background, drawing your attention to the center of the picture. I have nothing bad to say about the cover. Of course, I really don't usually have a lot to say about covers, being that, well, most people don't even care for my own covers. So, I mean, I love my covers, and It's not just because I also created my own covers, but which is something they say you should never do. But I mean, who knows the story better than the creator? I mean, you gotta have some insight into the covers, and I can feel from this that even if he did not create his own cover, I'm sure he had some insight into what he wanted the cover to be like, or the person who created the cover did read the book and talked with the author on what they were creating. So I can definitely tell there was some collaboration there. Like I said, I like it. It's a really nice cover. I'm going to give it 5 stars. Now moving on to the narration. Now, I just want to say, before I begin talking about the narration, that I really, really struggled a lot with this one. Because I want to say part of this for when I get to the story portion, but the way the author narrated it really, really reminded me of things from my childhood, things from when I was younger, and things from more recent times. Like the way it's read, I don't know if it's the way it was written or just the manner in which it was delivered through the person's voice. It really reminded me, and I've probably said this before on other things, but I love when something reminds me of Ready Player One. The entire time I was listening to this, it was reminding me of some of my favorite chapters of Ready Player One. Like when Percival is going down into the dungeon on this planet that he's been on forever, and he's facing off against the Lich King. A lot of the way things are described, a lot of the movements and actions that are taken by the character in both books. Like I said, I'm not sure if it's the manner in which he reads the story to you or the way he wrote the story in the book. But it also reminded me in certain sections where he goes on a little tangent, but not a big tangent. But there's a scene where he was describing this man's tattoos and everything that was on this man. And that really reminded me of some of the independent remakes of like King's Quest and King's Quest 2. When they were remade into point-and-click adventures rather than the text-based old-fashioned computer games they started out as. I even was curious to the point where, I was like, have you done independent games? And although this author has done voice work in games, he had not done the independent King's Quest games, which I kind of found shocking because I swear his voice, to me, sounded a lot like the voice of the person who narrates for King's Quest 2. Maybe not exact, but darn close. So, for narration, there was one or two slightly problem areas, but they're so minor, you can kind of skip right past them. Like, there's one character's voice he's doing that is really dark, and it's a little hard to understand this character in this level of this, temple, but you kind of get what was said through the characters' inner monologues and stuff. So, I mean, it's pretty skippable, that scene. I think there was one other scene where, like, two characters were talking, and I wasn't sure if it was, like, just a bad cutoff or something, or maybe it was my, phone just trying to catch up or something, and it, like, skipped a space or something. But, yeah, I mean, really, honestly, there was not much of an issue other than those little bits. Um, Maybe he can, touch it up in the future. I mean, if depending on what company he went through. But I mean, I really enjoyed this, and I have to honestly say, I would save this part. This is gonna be something from the extras, but this really plays into the score. The fact again that this is a self-published author, and he did such a great job with the narration on his own, and the fact that he has experience. I'd love for him to do one of my books one day. So for narration, he gets a 5. Now moving on to the story. Now the story, I will say this. I loved this story. I had no major problems with this story. Except, I feel like it would have been a benefit to the author if maybe this was not a standalone book. And what I mean by this is, I think there's a certain spot where they could have stopped the story and turned this into 2 books. Because I have something that I'm going to take from here and I'm going to carry over into characters. But just remember there's something with the characters that I'll get into that I really think could have made this book a little bit longer. Would have been a little bit cooler. A lot happens in the story. And yes, while a good half of the book is getting to the games and stuff, the last third of this is something completely different. In fact, going to the games isn't even really a major part of the beginning. This thing that is ultimately happens all seems to be a manner of consequence. Maybe that's not the right word. But it's like the character is forced to do it to achieve the goal he wants to achieve. And I feel like I spoke, with the author on the subject and he informed me that I was the first one to ever bring this up. But there's a certain plot element that I just felt like, he could have said something a certain way, gotten around it, so certain things didn't happen. But I understand, having finished the book, now why those things had to happen. And even though that those things did happen, it led me to something else with the characters, which was like, yeah, now that I'm thinking about it, I think we could have gotten 2 books from this. And it would have been just as great. It would have probably been even greater than what we got. But like I said, I did love this story. And I liked how every event seemed to lead to the other. It was really good. And I'm going to end this by saying I'm giving the story 5 stars. So moving into characters, I feel like there were certain characters that, like I said, needed more time. I felt like there were certain aspects of the moments and the crew that we didn't get to fully experience. for this story. And by that, I mean, Dantess was perfect. We got to know Dantess quite well. You got to know his character quite well. You got to know Warren quite well. Beyond that, there was a slight love interest that I would have loved to seen get a little bit more time. I won't say why I wanted to see a little bit more time. Even if it was like a meet secretly, like there's this point where these two characters, they can't be seen together. And it would have been nice to have little moments sprinkled in maybe a montage or something where we see that these two characters do go against the rules and constantly meet up, even if they're not, confessing their undying love at that moment. Maybe there's little moments where they do meet up, and you kind of just get hints that that might be happening from their first time where we see this happen. And it could have provided a little more suspense and drama to the events. And I'm talking about Warren's sister, who is Dantess' best friend. There's also other characters, like there is a character we meet, and it's the one time that I can remember in the entire story where we actually stop following the main character and suddenly switch over to this character. And I'm like, wait a minute, why? If you had done 2 books, you could have been sprinkling her in little bits by little bits and slowly revealing her story alongside, mainly focusing on Dante's story. But, I mean, as an author myself, I know how hard doing this can be. I am guilty of that myself. I just was lucky enough to catch it back when I released my first book, The Guardian of Light, because I was so focused on telling Shane's story, setting up Shane's character for the end of the book, that I completely spaced on showing what I started the book out with, which was the villain of the story. And I'm like, oh crap, I got one scene at the beginning, I got one scene at the end, and a little scene near the end, which gets ready for the big climax. But I had nothing else showcasing what was this thing up to, since it came in, killed Santa Claus, and ran off. So I had to go back through, and I had to sprinkle in a little bit more moments setting up this bad guy for the big battle at the end. And I just feel like that was something that was overlooked in this story, because for this story, you're following Dantess. It's like following Harry Potter, suddenly switching over to one little side character who becomes a major character at the end. But then you go back to Harry Potter, and then you're just following Harry Potter for the rest of it. Whereas, I felt like if he had made the book just a little bit longer, it could have stopped just before the games were about to begin, or something, or just like end on him achieving what he needs to get into the games. Then the second book could have picked up with him getting ready for the games, getting prepared for the games, and then we could have gotten the climax, But for what we got, like I said, when I said I love the story. I did love the story. And if my biggest complaint is that I wanted more of that story, in that story, to make that story longer, like an extended cut, you did a great job. So for characters, I'm going to have to issue 4 stars. The characters we got, the main characters, the ones that really mattered the most to the story, we got to learn a lot about them. And we got to learn a lot about who they are. The villains, you really hate these villains. The main hero, you love the main hero. You love his best friend. But some of the side characters didn't get fleshed out quite so much. And if the author were to do maybe an extended hardback cover cut of this book, maybe that's some more stuff they could write into it, giving people actually a reason to get the hardback cover or an extended audiobook of this. Just an idea. But 4 stars. And if this ever did happen, if this extended thing I'm talking about ever was a possibility, then I would easily bump that up to 5. I just felt like, again, some of the characters, I wanted more of them. I wanted to know more about them. I needed to learn more about them to really care. When characters die, I feel bad that the character died based on the little bit of information and how much they mean to other characters, but it wasn't as impactful or heart-wrenching as a character I really would have gotten to know. So again, 4 out of 5 stars for characters. So moving on to the extras. As I said before, the fact that the author who wrote this actually narrated it as well, to me, is a huge extra. From what I've seen, I haven't visited the websites yet, but this author has paperbacks, has ebook. Possibly one day, maybe they'll even have a hardback copy, or maybe they'll have a hardback copy which will include this with others. I'm not sure. Or maybe like a hardback extended edition, maybe, hopefully. Like I said, I really like this story. And I would love to see an extended, edition where we get maybe a little bit more of, certain characters added in. Like I said, Dantess' crew, I hardly remember any of them because we were so focused on Dantess and Warren. And yeah, he had other people helping him, but they had such little presence in the book. They were just his squad and they were there. But I really did like the main character a lot. And that says something when even if, your main character is carrying the book for you, that's a good thing. But he has Facebook, Amazon, Goodreads, Twitter, Instagram. Links to everything will be down in the description below. So, definitely feel free to check out all his work. Like I said, really love this. I think the covers were beautiful. The world was explained rather nicely. It gave me a feeling almost like a true fantasy version of Star Wars meets almost like a different version of One Piece, which is an anime series I just recently got into myself. He has won an award for the next book that I'll probably be reviewing in this series. So I guess we should just move into the final score then. And for the final score, I'm going to have to give this book. I so badly want to give this a 10 out of 10. I really do. Because, like I said, I love the narration. I love the story as it is. If it was longer, it would have been a 10 out of 10, regardless. No questions asked. But the story sort of, I mean, it doesn't really drop off once we reach the end of the title, which is the Game of War, which is supposed to be the main focus of the book. And it is brought up quite a bit. But after, it's just like, okay, well, we're still going, even though the game is over. And the game kind of made me think of things like, Hunger Games, which I'm not really, the biggest fan of. But if I were just looking at the title, but the narration, like I said, it was great. The characters, I only complain that I want more of those characters. I want more of that world, and there is more to come. There is another whole book I have to read, or in my case, listen to, since I listen to audiobooks only. So, like I said, I am so torn because the score is sitting at a 9 out of 10, if I'm to be fair. But how much I liked it, and the fact that it is one of the first books that really did have an extra, because the reason why I'm so torn on this one is this is a self-published author. Someone like Chris Colfer, who has done the same thing, narrated his own writings. He is a big-time actor who had a publishing house behind him. And this author, Glenn, he didn't have that. He's a self-published author. He went through Amazon and he went through ACX. And as a self-published author myself, who knows how rough that can be, and to do things all on your own, it's a tremendous. You have no idea how insanely that is to do something on that scale. So, yeah, I think I'm going to do that. You know what? This one gets a 10 out of 10. It took a lot of guts and courage, and after a long hiatus of doing this, and it wasn't because I didn't want to keep doing these. I actually do want to keep doing these. I love doing these audiobook reviews. So yes, since he was the first one to really reach out to me in a long time, I'm going to have to give this one a 10 out of 10. It deserves a perfect score because it was a really good introduction into this world. And if people are going to get into this, this is the first one they're probably going to pick up. And I really have high hopes for the now sequel, which is actually the original, because this was a prequel to his first book. So, like I said, 10 out of 10. If you have not read this, if you are curious about this at all, hopefully I didn't spoil too much. Definitely go check this out for yourself on Amazon or on Audible or iTunes. Links to everything will be down below. You can check out Glenn and all his other works. You can leave a comment if you have read this. Do you agree? Was there something I overlooked that I just glossed over? Was I too blown away by the narration? Because, like I said, Ready Player One, even Ready Player Two, is some of my favorite books. Not written by yours truly, but I really love the Ready Player One books. They're so full of nostalgia. And it's just the way Will Wheaton reads it. I'm not sure if it's just that or if it's the way it's written. It's really hard for me to tell. I kept toying with that very thought the entire time I was listening to this. Is it the way he's reading it to me, or is it the way it's written? But since it's read and written by the same person, yeah, that's great. It takes a lot of courage to be able to produce an audiobook of your own work. I didn't have enough faith that I could do it. I mean, I would love to have a role in putting together my audiobook. You know, do like a voice of a small character, reoccurring character. Or maybe do the voice of the main character, since I know the main character so well and how he should be reacting. But no, I mean, I don't want to. I'm not good at reading aloud, as you can probably clearly tell from the beginning. I don't know if I read the synopsis the way it was supposed to, but yeah, I mean. So definitely go check out The Game of War. It definitely gives me vibes of, like I said, Ready Player One by the way it was read. And I even told my friend, who you've seen on this channel before, Anime Senpai, I told him to even go check out this book because I said, this feels, the way it's talked about, almost like a weird version of One Piece, where, you know, in One Piece, Luffy wants to be like Roger, but this is almost like Luffy if he wanted to be like his grandfather Garp. And if Dragon was trying to convince Luffy not to, but Luffy was just like, no, I'm going to be like Grandpa. It also kind of gave me Star Wars vibes, because this whole hierarchy system kind of felt like the Empire. And I think if the author wanted to do an extended version, I think he could add in more about these harbingers of chaos, setting them up a little bit better, because I would have liked to have learned a lot more about them. Also, I probably would have liked to know more about the gods that they keep talking about. Are the gods actually real? Do they exist? Have they ever been involved in this world? You know, that is some of the questions I'm hoping will be answered in future books. But yes, if you have not, or if you would like to, check out this story on your own. Pick up your copy today. You will not regret it. I cannot give this book enough praise. And this is something I can definitely see being turned into a movie or a TV show one day. And if you do like it, maybe even check out, you know, my book series, The Guardian of Light, which is almost finished at this point. I'm currently working on book 6. And yeah. So I want to thank you all for watching. I hope this review was informational and didn't spoil too much. If you could, please give this video a like. subscribe, make sure to click that notification bell, and I will talk to you all next time.